Dr. Toby Long is a family physician working at a further qualified community health center in Saginaw, Michigan. His topic is entitled Health and Hope, Finding the Soul of Primary Care. Dr. Toby Long.
Tough image. Poverty, crack cocaine. Question. Which is more dangerous for a patient? Okay, unfair question. You likely can't answer the question. I certainly can't. But it's a question that I think will move us toward thinking about something I believe should be on the minds of primary care providers. The idea that hope is healthy. As for the unfair question, someone has offered an answer. Dr. Hallam Hurt, UPenn professor and author of the famous crack baby study, after reviewing 25 years worth of data, concluded, poverty is a more powerful influence on the outcome of inner city children than gestational exposure to crack cocaine. Others have looked at the relationship between hope and health more directly. Dr. Scioli, in his 97 Hope study, noted how decreased hope scores correlated with increased frequency and severity of illness. Dr. Groupman at Harvard has written how researchers are seeing that a change in mindset can alter neurochemistry. More recently, Dr. Lopez has documented how hope increases healthy behavior, like increased consumption of fruits and vegetables, regular exercise, safer sex, and smoking cessation. So what? So the pathophysiology of poverty makes me want to talk about the psychology of hope, because scholars are beginning to discern that hope is healthy, and I've seen how sometimes hope may be the best medicine when a patient could care less about the latest evidence-based medicine. So when I finished residency, I landed in Saginaw, Michigan. It's Detroit's little brother to the north. Along with Flint, Saginaw provided the people and the parts to keep the automotive industry booming through the 20th century. Lately, not so much. Now Saginaw, or Sagnasty as my patients like to joke, has declined all the way to the top. The FBI has called it the most violent city in America every year from 2003 to 2009. In 2012, Forbes magazine described it as the most dangerous city in America for women. The city is very small, but the problems are huge. It's a good thing I went to Grand Junction to train to be a rural family doc. To give a little clinical context, I was the 14th provider at my FQHC in 8 years. In my first 12 months in the clinic, there were 30 homicides and 117 non-fatal shootings within 3 miles of the clinic. Now, you can't really sell property in the neighborhood, but my buddy did buy a house last year, 3 bedrooms, 1,600 square feet, for $400. And the provider whose position I inherited had the ignoble distinction of being the #1 prescriber of narcotics for regional HMO. So not to say I started out hopelessly in over my head. But that was 2 years ago, and now I'm still in over my head. But I want to say to you, foster hope. Hope is healthy. So at worst, you at this point think I'm nuts. At best, simply naive. Either way, the pill I'm pushing is hard to swallow. The stories, they're depressing. The stats are hard to believe. Like when a grandmother pulled me aside in a well-child check recently and said, "Doc, Johnny saw his father murder his mother last month. What do I do?" It's easy to feel hopeless. It's hard not to feel overwhelmed. But if you're beginning to think that it's tough to be a doctor in the neighborhood, just try being a patient. Fact is, we cannot appreciate the difficulties many of our patients face. Take Morris, for instance. Morris is an ex-con man, hitman, with bipolar disorder, severe anxiety, and 2 stints in the state pen. Well, he came to me last year. He says, "Doc, my wife left me." I asked, "Why?" He says, "Well, she's a prostitute, and she got tired of me asking her not to work the weekends." He went on to complain about the neighborhood and his mood swings and anxiety, and I frankly didn't know what to say to him. So I said, "Are you taking your meds?" And his response, I quote, "Listen, Doc, nobody gives a shit. Why should I?" And that's it. Forgive the impropriety, But his is a sentiment that I see all too often in too many of my patients who become convinced that nobody cares. Why should I? Unfortunately, the sentiment is real and it's reasonable, and I think all too often a fundamental reason why poverty is so bad for health. Because poverty breeds hopelessness, and hopelessness becomes unhealthy by causing a patient to care less. Say to you in the office, just give me the Percocet. I don't want to hear about AA. No, I didn't refill my hydrochlorothiazide, whatever. What's frustrating for you is pointless for them. There's no real reason to quit smoking or avoid binging. No reason to take the Prozac or skip the Xanax. Try and convince this patient that smoking cessation is good and the extra Vicodin is not. You can't. I've tried. There simply isn't anything in Hippocrates or up-to-date that works. And that's my point. Sometimes on the messy front lines of real life, when medicine gets mixed up in chronic illness, poverty, and depression, or some admixture of it all, we have to admit we need something more than the right script. Morris needs something more. Morris needs something from the soul of primary care. Now that move towards something more I call the great reminder, okay? It's like the psychosocial equivalent of pulling out the meropenem or the daptomycin. You cannot use it too early, but it can save the day. And what is it? It's the clinical attempt to bring a patient to an awareness of their immeasurable worth. Okay, sensing a healthcare homily, you may resist. You may see no philosophical grounds for granting any patient immeasurable worth. I struggle to see it myself, but thank God, my faith saves me, whispering often against emotion and inclination that every patient has dignity and worth apart from what they might offer me and apart from what they can contribute to society, certainly apart from what they own or have the ability to buy. Why? Because patients are more than dust and DNA. They're persons made in the image and likeness of God, and as such they have dignity and worth beyond measure. This is the clinical smelling salt of my faith. That's where the theological can transform the clinical. Asking and inviting me to do more than just write scripts or make a referral. Inviting me to recognize worth. And if I recognize worth, a patient may experience care. And by experiencing care, they begin to believe they matter. And when a patient believes they matter, it's like the grand slam of primary care. Because they move beyond apathy and ambivalence toward active participation in maintaining their own health and well-being. So here's my rural white guy 2-cent inner city perspective. Make the crazy attempt to listen and to care in such a manner that communicates worth apart from knowledge or beauty or skill or whatever it is that culture and society require for one to believe they matter. And while there's no guarantees, you may have the privilege of hearing somebody like Morris ask you to wean him off his Vicodin. Or Gloria may tell you about her last AA meeting. Willie may say, hey, how do I get a gym membership? And Peggy may say, hey, can you refill my antidepressant? And this time, I'm actually going to take it. That's the power of hope, working in the heart of a patient to do what no provider can. Make good decisions, forego bad habits, and see health as a priority and reality in life. Foster hope. Hope is hope.